Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street XDC video for you guys today. Quite easy one to find on the charts as XDC. This relates to the Zimfin project or company and its token XDC, something I've had in my portfolio for a number of years now. Always to this day say that it's very much under the radar. It's not talked about enough, yet the market that it plays in is absolutely staggering. In fact, it plays in a few. It was renowned a few years back as a hybrid blockchain with its ability to essentially provide service in the public and the private sectors. So it already opened up significant portions of opportunity in those areas. Multi-trillion dollar markets and sectors around the world. You name it, it could cover it. Before we go into a bit more detail of XDC in this video, I've done a multitude of videos on XDC. I think we're just going to focus quickly on the 2.0 structure that went live back in September, how that's kind of come into fruition and what that means for the token, certainly this year and moving forward. And we'll quickly jump onto the other sectors, for example, in the trade network aspect of XDC as well, just to quickly reiterate the power that XDC has in its hands and what we can maybe tap into as an investor over the coming years. So let's look at that. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, to smash that subscribe button, and don't forget as well to look at the other videos on the channel, those different projects and topics. As always, hopefully you enjoy them, and let us know in the comments below on any of the videos your thoughts and opinions on each of the projects that we cover as well, and any other ones that we don't cover necessarily that you want us to. It's not just about ones I have in the portfolio. I'd like to explore other areas for you guys as well. But yes, XDC is one of those that's always an in-demand video. Again, very under the radar, which I'm always surprised about. So the 2.0 aspect, which launched last year with XDC, this is very much an advancement on its previous network capabilities. Just to kind of give a rough overview of the representation of 2.0 as very much an upgrade to the Zimfin network. The usual things that you can expect in blockchain, to be honest. Enhancing the scalability, the security aspect, the energy efficiency, of course. The security aspect I'm going to pull out in more detail in a second, because I want to talk quickly about forensic monitoring. I think this is absolutely phenomenal area of interest in blockchain in general, but what XDC's capabilities are now they've got the protocol of 2.0. So I think it very much kind of positions itself not necessarily as a leading blockchain in enterprise grade, but certainly up there. I think there's a lot of other projects out there as well that dabble into this area, but I would say that it's probably at the moment one of, if not perhaps the leader in global trade aspects, the supply chain finance when it comes to integration of the blockchain mentality. We'll look at some of that in a second on their website, because we can look at what that area entails. We've talked about it so many times in the past about the market value of that. We'll reiterate that in a second as well. And of course the opportunity to tokenize assets, and that's a broad topic, to be honest, in blockchain. So many projects have that ability to enable digital tokenization of physical assets as well as digital, of course. But we're starting to see some real world application for XDC, and I think that's really exciting. And if it stays under the radar, I'm happy to be able to purchase XDC still at these very low prices, because I do think really some good moves. We'll go into the chart detail in a second where we think that might go, not just for this year but the future as well. So the XDC token, of course, like many other blockchains out there, is of course used for the transaction fees aspect, so just get used on those principles. You've got the staking mechanism, which sometimes a lot of people utilize the XDC token for. I wouldn't say the staking protocols for XDC are massive at this moment in time, but it's certainly definitely one of the reasons why the XDC token is used. And of course, in terms of its actual technological aspect, smart contracts area is of great interest, especially when it comes to the trade part. We'll come back to that in a second. But yes, it does facilitate a lot of things like cross-border payments. Again, there's loads of companies out there that do that kind of thing already, and XDC is definitely one of those that can add to that. So I'm going to just pull out this quick interesting part here So the 2.0 upgrade, military grade security and forensic monitoring. I just want to talk about that really quickly. So the forensic monitoring aspect essentially allows the ability to track and analyze blockchain activity to ensure compliance. Now, blockchain is very much there for the processing and the validity of transactions and confirming things, right? So to have that ability in a more advanced way, which I think XDC does portray really well, we can also add on to the detecting of anomalies, so anything that's not really supposed to be there, and of course mitigating the risks associated with financial crime. So that in itself is a huge economic bust up when it comes to things like fraudulent activity, money laundering, usual things like unauthorization of transactions. So it can utilize its network in this 2.0 infrastructure to leverage these advanced tools that can be built on it, but also within it. So that could essentially include things like real-time data, immutable records. I think these are important to allow businesses and regulators to essentially audit transactions more transparently, but also in a speedier fashion. Now, I've seen recent articles the last couple of weeks about Elon Musk's supercomputers and things like that, and I think quantum computing in general is absolutely gigantic, and I think this is one of maybe the things I can sort of perceive in the coming years is a battle between blockchain and AI and quantum computing. And I think for the better it will advance all these areas anyway as time goes by, because blockchain and AI will have to adapt to the abilities of quantum and vice versa. Quantum will have to improve because of the improvements in AI, blockchain, IoT, 4G, etc. So when we're looking back at this forensic monitoring aspect, yes, you've got the audit trails. KYC compliance is definitely integrated in between that. So, essentially hopefully, trying to reduce or remove anti-money laundering and things like that. Very important when you look at things like real estate. Obviously, when you buy and sell, particularly here in the UK, I'm assuming it's the same elsewhere. There's so many audit trails, land registries, money laundering checks, things like that. Imagine how quicker it can be with the use of blockchain. We've talked about that in real estate videos many, many times, but it just pulls in that aspect of what we're talking about here. Risk management in general and interoperability is important as well, because we have to start thinking more alignment with other chains being used with XDC and vice versa. And generally, the markets and sectors out there will be using not just one, but many multiple chains. So especially off-chain systems, where I think compliance could be a bit messy, 2.0 of XDC can help with that. So when we talk about the residual value of forensic market, or the forensic monitoring market, this was valued from the research I did earlier at $3 billion in 2023, which I think is quite conservative. It might have been slightly higher than that, but that's one of the most recent reports that I saw. It's projected to grow to over $10 billion in 2030. So that's very much driven by the compliance requirement and security requirements in digital finance moving forward. If we're looking at things like the software markets, which does include blockchain, I can see some reports earlier that that's going to be expected to exceed $9 billion in 2030, up from $4 billion a couple of years ago. So I think that's a really interesting area when we talk about market share and the opportunity that XDC has in these sectors. So yes, XDC token in a blockchain facility is fantastic, but when we look at the sectors and the market opportunities available, it gives you a bit of a picture of what monetary values these areas can go into. And that's not to say XDC is going to like hundreds of dollars in the next few years. It might do, but it gives you an additional reasoning in your mindset when you're investing and looking at researching these kind of projects and topics. A lot of my projects that I hold in my portfolio, like XDC, are long-term visions. I see the future. I'm heavily involved or regarding around people that are heavily involved themselves in things like trade finance. I've been to many invitational things like the TFDI with Andre, etc. I talk about this all the time because it's important to understand that I'm involved in events or see events where they are talking about this all the time, and they're showing me like in real time all the systems, the projects that they're utilizing for this area. So on screen, for example, now about document exchanges and executions of that, the MLETR compliance aspect is really important. So MLTR, that's the model law on, if I've got this right, on electronic transferable records, if I remember off the top of my head. That's a massive compliance, particularly in the EU specifically at the moment, which basically enables the legal recognition of electronic versions of documents, particularly in trade. So things like bills of lading, letters of credit. These are huge in supply chain, by the way, guys. This overall kind of area, the global sector value of trade finance, is currently valued at around $8 to $10 trillion annually. Phenomenal. You can imagine what it would be in 2030, right? So we loop that back in. Ironically, I think when we loop that conversation back in to all these abilities of XDC and things like that, it does come into fruition in your head to see what magnitude this could get to. So when we talk about the trade network aspect, we talk about the element of forensic monitoring, we talk about all the individual elements that 2.0 brings and what XDC brings as its own aspect of layer 1 blockchain facility and application. It really does stand out to be something that could be huge in the future. As I said, I think it's very under the radar. I'm always surprised by this because of the magnitude of the opportunity that's available to us. And people maybe in 5 years, 10 years time, XDC will be fully integrated and people will start chasing it. And by that time, the price will be like potentially ludicrous. We don't know, but there's some vast predictions out there. One on screen right now. I think it's suggesting, going, up to $1.20 in 2030. I'd be very surprised if it's not higher than that in 2030, to be honest. But it's saying that the price points at the moment have kind of been fluctuating at these kind of lower regions anyway. So I'm going to pull this up on the charts on the screen now because I think it's a good point in time in this video to talk about this in more detail. You see in the previous highs up here, back in August 2021, we hit 20 cents. So they're predicting that for 2026. I don't think that's too appropriate a prediction. I do think in general, if the market goes the way we think it will do in 2025, and I think more awareness comes around about trade finance and little individual aspects of what blockchain is capable of, and specifically XDC, I think we could be pushing towards maybe that 30 odd cents, and that's kind of almost verified in a couple of fib retracement levels here. We've got the longer term one that I did ages and ages ago, probably like 2 years ago or so, and one of the more recent ones based on the midterm strategies of fib placements. You can see here that they very much nearly align. So there's two elements here. We want to get to the previous all-time at 20 cents, and then after that we're going to see some really interesting resistance areas coming up. Now a lot of people will go out there and go, how dare you say 30 cents or whatever. I think that's a general conservative approach to think about that. Yes, of course I want to see it go higher. I'm not undervaluing this or trying to undervalue it on purpose. I'm just talking about the progression of this technology, the progression of the real world utility. I don't think it's fully there yet. And even in the UK, with the laws that have passed in just the last 12 months for the digitalization of bills and things like the trade finance bills, etc., that takes time to educate businesses, to educate industries and sectors and people within them, and the utilization or integration of AI and other technologies. That's why I'm saying like 5 to 10 years time is a really interesting value opportunity. But the here and now in 2025, yes, some big things are happening in the finance world. The RTGS system switch on, the ISO 222 compliance coming into full fruition this year as well. Lots of things going on politically also. That's why I think we could realistically get to potentially this 30 odd cent mark. If we continue this nice sideways movements for the next couple of weeks, we move towards the April where Trump gets into the White House. That could have a bit of a kick up as well, of course. But I think as and when we see more integration in the real world, that's when we'll see the progressive powers of potentially XDC hitting those higher numbers. I said I don't think 2030. I think I'd be surprised if it was less than $1.30, to be honest. But even on the long-term fib levels at the moment, the highest spectrum could be 80 cents. We might see that in 2025, I don't know. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts and opinions on this, your predictions. But that's just thought process based on data, but also what I know in the industry and sector at the moment that's going on, not just the market in crypto, but what's happening with the sectors in general as well. But that aside, people might think that's negative. I'm going to look at some load of positives at the moment. Look at these greens on the right hand side here in the performance indicators. And that 6 month is absolutely phenomenal at 225%. The weeklies and the 3 months are strong as well. And the month one, that kind of goes back to my point about this sideways movement. I'd like to see this play out and stay steady around this sort of 8-9 cents mark, because then I do think that we could start retesting those sort of 13 to 15 cent markers. But we need to get the validation here first before we do that. The RSIs are showing 57 and 58 on the bottom left hand side here on the 14 and the 28 day close respectively. That's suggesting there is definitely room for improvement on the price upward trend, but equally on the way down. So we just need to keep an eye out on these levels here. If we start sidetracking here around this sort of 55 for too long, people get bored. That's just how it is in the market. If there's no news and updates and things like that, you'll start maybe following it down to about 45 to 42 RSI in these coming weeks. It's a good buy opportunity, of course. For me, I won't be buying any more XDC. I was buying a lot of it at sort of 2 to 4 cents in high numbers and high quantities. So now I'm just waiting to see if we get to those previous all-time highs. I may do a DCA sell out around the 14-15 cent mark at these fib levels, but ultimately I'm here for the long term of XDC. If we get to a bear market and it starts, being confirmed to me that actually 10 cents is almost like the new low point of XDC, then of course I'll change that strategy slightly. But for what I see at the moment, these are my target areas for sure, around that 30 cents and the 50 cent mark. Talking about the other ones above it, it's kind of pointless right now. I'm just planning to see what's ahead of me, and the intricate detail in between those big levels as well is always important to look at. So that's my thoughts and feelings on XDC at the moment. A bit of a backtrack on the information provided as to why I'm so bullish in the long run for XDC. I'm really interested to know that those that don't hold XDC, why you aren't. So please do leave your comments below on why that is, or if you're doing extra research or you're being patient with it. There's no right and wrong, to be honest, at all. Just general interest. And for those that are holding XDC, what's your thoughts and opinions about those possibilities of price in 2025 and your ambitions, your goals, your thoughts for XDC in the future? I'm going to wrap that up there, guys. We'll do another update video on XDC very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.